everyone's picture is different. What everybody needs is different. By taking that time, I think it allows all the emotional floods to hopefully, get out of our heads, where we can sit down and then kind of look at this in more of a more logical approach.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searens, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
Alongside Scott Searens, I'm Ben George. Glad to have you here on Your Life, Your Money. This podcast touches a wide range of financial planning conversations. Today we got a good one. It's a double-edged sword, some things that are both positive and negative in retirement planning. They have both sides of it, and a lot of stuff does, right? There's two sides to most things. Got to have that balance. And today we're going to run through a lot of these scenarios with Scott, get his input and his perspective on things. So it should be a good show once again for you. And Scott, good to talk to you again.
Ben, great to talk to you. I think we'll have a great show. I think these are some of the can really be challenging, right? Where it's like, okay, hey, I could go this way, I could go that way. It seems like there's pros and cons to each side. So which direction do I head?
Yeah, and that's where we rely on you. You have the knowledge and the power to lead us in the right direction, I think, and that's what we're going to hope for today. But we talk a lot about your parents, I think, on this show. You mentioned them quite a bit, and we talk about family quite a bit on this show. I know you've been pretty close to them and you learn a lot from them. Who besides your parents, though, has taught you the most in life?
Well, for me, Ben, there's actually a couple of people. One is my uncle, Roger, and reason for that is he is actually in the financial services industry. He's got his own firm in Colorado, and so he's been a huge part in, helping my business as I've, as I got started and as I continue to grow. He's been just a huge, I'll say, mentor from the business side. Him and I talk each and every day, just, whether it be about personal life, business, and he's just been a huge part of my overall growth. And then other than Roger, I've got Jim, and Jim's not only a friend, he's I'll say a business mentor as well as a personal mentor. He's that, that person that I can call any day. I know that I'm going to get a call back, and, helps me work through the ups, helps me work through the downs. It's, just a truly great relationship, a great person to have in my life. And he has really, helped coach me along the way. And it's been awesome just to kind of, see the growth that I've had through a lot of his support. So, a couple great people in my life. How about you? Who's been influential in your life?
Let's see. That's a tough one. I hadn't really thought too deep about it. My grandparents quite a bit were always people that I spent a lot of time with growing up, and they were always around our house and got to pick up a few lessons. It's always good when you kind of peel off away from your family and your parents and kind of get that perspective from someone else's family, right? But also they aren't, maybe is structured, or they aren't always by the book, right? You kind of open up a little bit more with like your grandparents, and it's always kind of maybe the good side of parenting, right? Not that there's a bad side necessarily, but it's always the positive side with your grandparents. I always had a lot of fun just kind of spending time with them and learning from whatever lessons they had for me. So that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point there. It's finding somebody that you can open up to. And hey, like I say, my parents have, provided a lot of great support to me in my life. But I think it's sometimes also finding somebody maybe outside of your parents that you can open up to, and that they'll provide that time to listen and provide you thoughts, guidance, advice that might be different than what you're normally used to.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. So yeah, it's always interesting to think about that. Hopefully we all have people close in our life that have impacted us, and I know that's what you know you want to have that impact on people. Maybe not quite as personal on a lot of levels, but hopefully as a mentor, financial mentor, right? I'm sure that's kind of the angle you take on things a lot with your clients.
That's our goal. We're just, I am here to be a guide, right? It's their life. Everybody has their own unique life, their own unique structure, and what they want to do with their money and what they've saved up. And I'm here to be that coach, that guide, to help them understand, what they can do. And I've found it's funny now that we're, as we continue to go through this and as you had mentioned, opening up, I've found that as clients continue to open up more and more, the more that they're able to let me into their lives, the more value and benefit that I can bring them to help them confidently go in whichever direction or path that they want to go.
Yeah, well said. All right, let's get into our main topic today. It's a double-edged sword. There's many financial circumstances you're going to find yourself in that you look at both sides. There's going to be some positive and some negative. There are going to be some good consequences. There are going to be some bad consequences. So you want to get as much information and be as informed as possible so that you can make the right decision. Think about what Sir Isaac Newton said, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So let's talk about some of the ways that an advisor should walk people through and what your thought process is, Scott, for a lot of these predicaments. And I think it will kind of help people understand your process and maybe hopefully shed a little light into which side might be better for them. So I want to lead things off with stocks and investing. And I think this is a position a lot of people have been in here over the last year or so, but you have this predicament where you want to sell some stock, right? Because you've had a lot of growth over the last year or two, whatever it is. You want to capitalize on that, but you think, well, if I do that, I've got this tax burden waiting on me on the other side.
You're totally right. Let's help everyone understand those both sides of the double-edged sword here. So we've had growth, right? Our value of our account has grown, so it's good. And the thought process of the question is right on, right? You want to buy low and you want to sell high. However, when we sell, and let's just assume here that these stocks are in a non-retirement account. So they're in an after-tax account, like a brokerage account. So when you sell, what that could trigger is capital gains tax. And so buy low, sell high, the good thought process, but then you want to capture your gains. And when you do so and you make that sell, it's going to trigger taxes. And dependent on how you do this, you could be looking at short-term capital gains. And short-term capital gains means that you made the sell in 1 year or less. And the way that will get taxed is at your ordinary income tax rate. So maybe you're in one of the 20% tax brackets or one of the 30% tax brackets. Well, if you sell in under a year, you're going to get taxed at that rate. However, if you wait 1 year or longer, then you're going to get the more favorable long-term capital gains rate. And that could be 0, could be 15, it could be 20. It all depends on your income bracket. So I think a couple questions here. Do you need to sell the stock? Because, well, one is timing, right? Like how long have you held on to things? And I see now, I realize a lot of people are kind of getting into the do-it-yourself, or they're seeing stuff online with some of these companies that are going rapid because of internet followings. And so they're like, oh, I got to jump on board, and then they sell right away, and they don't realize that they're triggering that extra tax for themselves. So number one is timing, and then number two is, do you need to sell the stock? Do you really need to diversify? Is it okay if you were to hold on to it longer? But if it's really on your mind to capture those gains, then here's what I would recommend, and here's what we work on with our clients, is finding the balance over time. And so each and every October, we have our year-end tax planning and tax strategy meeting where we're looking at how the year's gone so far, working with clients' tax person or CPA to put together a projection so we know where you would potentially be before the end of the year, and then saying, okay, based upon where we're at, what can we do that would potentially be in your best interest by the end of the year? So you might not be selling all of that stock. You might just be selling small portions of it, right? So we're maybe just trying to fill up the brackets, but not go into a new one each and every year. So you're almost then getting the best of both worlds. You're capturing some of your gains and hopefully capturing them at the lowest tax rate possible. A quick story for you here. I've got a client with a lot of company stock, and that's one thing that we do each year. Now, add on here is the client said, but boy, I don't know if I really want, this is kind of a little bit reverse of the question, but it's just so people think a little differently too. Client said, I don't know if I really want to sell the company stock, but they have a big portion of their portfolio into it. So they weren't they didn't have the best diversification. Good diversification, but could be a little bit better. And one of the things that we have to get into our minds is that just because we sell it doesn't mean that we can't go buy something else, right? So one of the things that we worked with there was, hey, just because we're selling this company's stock, now there are tax rules that you got to be careful of buying right away again, especially if you have a loss, but we're talking about gains. So you could go buy again, or, you can invest in a new fund, or, put yourself into a different investment. And so, but what we're doing is each and every year, we're looking to say, hey, what's going to put them in the best tax position possible for this year? And then based upon how much stock they might need to exercise next year, maybe we need to start recognizing some of that this year as well. So it's kind of called almost like playing a little bit of a game with the income tax brackets. And you want to do it before the end of the year to put yourself in the best position possible for this year, but also kind of looking at the future. Hey, what's your income going to look like next year? Do we do it this year? Do we do it next year? So it's that end of the year review that I think really helps this process. And it's understanding that you don't have to do everything at once, right? We don't have to go sell all of the stock at once. Let's do it in proportions that would hopefully be in your best interest.
All right, it's definitely the situation a lot of people find themselves in. So, work with someone before you take any action to kind of figure out what your best plan of attack is. All right, what about sudden wealth, right? You receive a big inheritance. That's great. You got a lot of money, right? You come into this new wealth that could change your life. But the other side of that coin is there was a loss somewhere, right, in order for that inheritance to come your way. So it's a positive on one side, but it's very tough mourning the loss of a loved one.
Not only tough mourning the loss of the loved one, but now there's maybe this emotional attachment, tied to this money or to this inheritance, to these funds that you've just received. So first off, I always tell clients is, hey, just hit pause for a second, right? Hit pause and take the time that you need. While you're doing this, you might want to just make your advisor aware of this inheritance. And if you have maybe some statements, just say, hey, do you mind doing a quick review, right? Because in the event that you do need to do something from a tax standpoint or an investing standpoint, they can hopefully point out to you that, okay, hey, here's just some immediate actions that we need to take. But other than that, what I tell clients is if there's nothing immediate that has to be done from a tax standpoint, then hey, hit pause, take your time. We've got plenty of time to think about this, to review it, to do what, is right for you and what, feels good to do with this money. Sometimes people look at it and get way too emotionally involved up front and they feel like, hey, look at this. Like you said, I just got this lump sum. Now it's time to splurge. So once that time has passed and you feel like the timing is right, and for everyone that's different, sometimes for people that's a few days, sometimes for people that's a few months, could be up to a year. But once the right time has passed is then to really sit down and have a conversation around it. Do you need this money for your retirement? Do you need this money to make sure that you're on track for your retirement? For some clients, that's a yes. For some clients, it might not be, right? This could almost be like a bonus check to them. If it's kind of like the bonus check, well, then what's the special way that you want to, remember that loved one? Or just maybe something that you've always wanted and, they would be really happy funding that for you. But I think, you have to be really careful in this, not to make any irrational emotional decisions up front and to take that time because everyone's picture is different. What everybody needs is different. By taking that time, I think it allows all the emotional floods to hopefully, get out of our heads where we can sit down and then kind of look at this in more of a more logical approach.
All right. One question I know that comes up a lot, and everybody utilizes their retirement accounts, or at least hopefully a majority of people are utilizing their retirement accounts in order to fund retirement and to save money. So the double-edged sword here is the Roth IRA versus the traditional IRA. On one hand, you got the Roth IRA that's going to grow tax-free, a beautiful thing. But on the other side, you got the traditional IRA, which allows you to take advantage of tax deductions for that year. So how do you balance these two?
This is a really interesting one. And let's just talk about the facts on this one. All revolve around taxes. right? So as you mentioned, the Roth IRA, you're going to pay tax on that money today, and it's going to grow tax-free. And then as long as you're making qualified withdrawals, you can withdraw it tax-free. And our minds go to that and go, wow, that sounds awesome. The traditional IRA, well, you get that deduction today. It grows tax deferred, but you have to remember every dollar that you take out in the future, you're going to have to pay income tax on it. But the factor on this one is that, well, if taxes today are the same as they are in the future, so if your tax rate today is the exact same as it's going to be in the future, well, it really doesn't matter because you're going to pay the same tax either way because the tax rate was exactly the same today as the future. So this one really comes down to your personal opinion on tax rates and where you think that future tax rates will be. But the other caveat that I'll throw in here is that, like right now, we are under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which kind of virtually lowered tax rates for everyone. So we know that that act will expire on December 31st of 2025. And if Congress doesn't do anything different, well, we know that tax rates will be, higher in the future. So it might be in your benefit to contribute to that Roth today, wait till the end of 2025 and then to reassess. Now, my personal opinion, I think with a lot of the stimulus that's been, given out and just kind of the overall debt of our country, my personal opinion is that taxes will most likely go up in the future. So I like to personally favor the Roth. However, everybody's situation is different. So if somebody is in a higher tax bracket today because of their job and their income, they might want to favor the traditional IRA if they feel that in retirement their tax bracket will be lower because of the income they're making today versus what they're going to make in the future. But the thing to be aware of there is I also see where people get a whole lot saved up into their IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, and they forget about the required minimum distributions, meaning the government will force you to take withdrawals from these accounts in your retirement. And if you've saved a healthy amount, those withdrawals can now put you in a similar or potentially a higher tax bracket in your future. So it really comes down to tax rates. What we're helping clients do is, a projection looking at where they're at today, where they're at in the future, what those required minimum distributions will look like in the future, and then trying to find the balance between the accounts. And sometimes it's, making contributions to both within the requirements and the rules and laws of how you can. You know what, Ben? I guess if we had the time machine, we'd have the right answers, right?
Right.
But what I'll end with here is that I really recommend tax diversification, having money in regular IRAs, having money in Roth IRAs, and one thing that wasn't even brought up here, but also having money in those after-tax brokerage accounts. Because then no matter what tax rates do in the future, you've got money now in all different spots to be able to withdraw from and put yourself in the best position possible.
Yeah, it seems like you never go wrong with diversification in any aspect of life, right? So balance is always the key. All right, one last or a couple more, but one more that ties into taxes here is your house, right? There's always a debate of if you are in a position to pay off your mortgage and really pay off the house completely, that's a great thing. But a lot of people will hesitate because they don't want to lose that tax deduction. So where do you stand on that?
This one is, I really would ask people to look at their taxes now to see if they're still getting the tax deduction. Because right now, the standard deduction might actually be more than what they're thinking that they're getting from the deduction because of interest. The other thing that I would look at is while you're getting a deduction on taxes, right? And it always feels good not to give the IRS so much money, is how much are you paying the bank in interest? And one thing I think that we can, lose track of is that, hey, we've got this house, we've got this mortgage, but over time, how much are you actually paying for the house? Because if you do have a mortgage, it's more than just the value of the mortgage that you're paying off or the house that you're paying off because you're paying the interest on that mortgage. And so we sometimes, we'll get very excited about the deductions that we're getting on our taxes, but we'll forget how much we're actually paying over 10, 15, or 30 years on that mortgage and interest. And so I kind of like to look at the calculations, how much time's left on that mortgage. Maybe you're only paying off principal now, but really like to look at the calculations to say, hey, here's what's in the client's best interest. But focusing on more than just taxes is also looking at the interest that you're paying the bank.
Yeah, that's a good one, and one that hopefully you're in a position to weigh and decide which route you want to go. And I know that's a goal for so many people, and can lift a huge burden off your shoulders to get that paid off. One more for you, Scott, I won't throw your way. Risk in your portfolio, right? So we always, throughout our life, and this changes, from early in your working career to when you transition to retirement, but you're always trying to find that right balance of risk and reward. That's what we all want to find, right? We want to make sure we're in it enough, we got enough risk so we can get those big gains. We also don't want to take on too much risk to where we see those huge losses. So I imagine this is a very tough one for most people to try to balance.
This is a tough one, right? And this comes back to that phrase we like to use of emotion versus logic, because we watch the market, we watch the ups and downs, we say, oh, we don't want to, lose, or we don't want to see the value of our account go down, but we do want to see it go up, right? So it's like you said, it's trying to find that balance. And so I like to help people by taking the emotion out of it. And to me, this really wraps around, what does your income plan say? Meaning, how much money will you need to withdraw from your accounts, let's just say in the next 5 to 7 years. Why do I pick 5 to 7 years? Because if you look at some of the market corrections over time, it takes maybe on average about 5 to 7 years for the market to rebound. And those are just top of mind, not a true statistic, but just kind of an estimate. And so we'd like to then say, okay, hey, let's make sure we at least have that 5 to 7 years of your withdrawals on that safer side of your portfolio. And then we can have the rest of that growth. Now, if you've got enough money and, I'll say worrying about your money is running out is not a risk to you, well, then maybe it's okay to go a little bit more conservative. Or, if you have enough money, maybe it's okay to take some more risk. But I like to, first start by taking the emotion out of it, looking at that income plan and saying, how much should we have on that safer side of the portfolio, just from an income plan standpoint and that withdrawal standpoint? Because what I find is some of the rules of thumbs out there, right? Like the rule of 100, meaning you take 100, you subtract your age, and that's how much should be at growth, and your age should be how much is at safety. I find some of those rules out there can actually become a little bit too safe, a little bit too conservative. And so that's why I like to focus on the income plan. Look at it this way. It's almost like building a house, right? You want to start with a plan, the income plan, and then the first thing that you put in is a really sturdy foundation. And to me, that sturdy foundation that you're putting in is as time goes on and as you get closer to retirement or you're in retirement, shifting a portion of your funds over to that safer side of your portfolio.
I got you. Definitely something that we all will try to discuss with an advisor, and something you want to lean on an advisor for, is to help you through not only this risk management, but all these different aspects of financial planning, because there's so many things to weigh, and you want to have a plan for whatever decision you make in these situations, and you don't just want to especially don't want to act emotionally in any of these. So it's very good to go through each of these, Scott, and get your perspective on them. And I'm sure if we haven't come across these, I think we all have at some point, at least one or two of these we've had to weigh and balance, but there'll probably be a couple more later in life. So hopefully this kind of gives you some perspective. But always don't hesitate to lean on Scott and the Searns Financial Group to help you out. You can find them at lifemoneyshow.com. Got a question for you, Scott, that came in. Kind of ties in a little bit to mortgages and housing that came into the show from Teresa. She asks you, what's your opinion of flipping houses as an investment strategy?
Great question. I really like real estate as an additional investment strategy. I think, we talked about diversification earlier. It's good to not put all of your, eggs maybe just into the investment bucket. And if you have the ability, right, or if you have the funds to look outside of that investment bucket, I like real estate as an investment strategy. And there's different ways to use real estate as an investment strategy. It could be flipping houses like Teresa is mentioning, or maybe you have rental properties bringing in that rental income. But one of the things that I think can get lost when people start talking about, real estate and utilizing it as an investment strategy is, what kind of return are you actually getting, right? So they might see that, oh, hey, this looks like a great property. I think I can buy it, fix it up, sell it, and I'll make X amount of dollars. That X amount of dollars, what kind of return is that actually on your money? And then, Ben, what I find sometimes is people really, forget or maybe leave out some of the extras, right? Because it's just easy to think like, hey, look at that, I made money. But the other factors that should probably go into, calculating that return is, don't forget, when you sell it, you're going to have to pay a commission. The expenses that you're going to have in the renovations of that home. Maybe you're able to pay cash for it, but if not, and you had to take out a loan, you're going to have interest that you're going to have to pay on that loan. Don't forget about your own time that you've got to put into this deal.
Yeah.
And then, buying and selling, if it's under a year, you could be looking at, short-term capital gains taxes. So now you've got to take tax out of those gains as well. So once you really factor in all of the different costs, what's the return that you're looking at on that real estate? Like I say, I like real estate as an investment strategy, but I also want you to, be focused on the return that you're getting for your money and comparing that to returns that you might be getting elsewhere as well.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right? Weighing the return, and because there's a lot of effort that goes into that. It definitely, the TV shows out there make it seem like it's a very exciting way to make money, right? And in many cases, an easy way to make money. You see what they buy it for, you see their budget for the renovation, you see the return. It's like, man, I want to do that. But there is so much work that goes into maintaining those houses and time. So that is definitely something to consider.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. They do make it look pretty easy.
I love it. All right, well, let's close the book on this episode of Your Life, Your Money. Scott, as always, we appreciate your insight. And I want to point to anybody that wants to learn more just about really what we're talking about today, or anything in this financial realm. We have a lot of resources and information, education, a lot of content up at lifemoneyshow.com. That's where it's kind of the hub for all of the work that Scott does to try to help educate not only clients, but anyone that's just looking to learn more. So you'll find it there at lifemoneyshow.com. If you do want to call him, though, as well, you can do so, 847-235-6989. All right, Scott, appreciate the time, as always, and a new episode coming next week. So I encourage everyone listening to please subscribe to the show, and we'll talk to him again soon.
Thanks for the great conversation.
Sierens Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Sierens Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Sierens Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Sierens Financial Group, Inc.